My areas of interest are rangeland ecology, wildlife ecology, and conservation science. Western-based paradigms of conservation are unfortunately based in spurious paradigms. For example, that African wilderness was once a vast, untouched wilderness with no influence of people, and that is absolute nonsense. We know from all the earliest pre-colonial explorers that communities were everywhere, people were everywhere, and they were living with wildlife, and they had cattle in these wildlife areas as well. And so people were benefiting from wildlife areas. There was a diverse income for them. They had invested interest in conserving the areas in which they live. The problem comes when you try to manage these systems as an ecological system alone, with no longer any regard for communities. Conservationists need to understand that conservation areas are not just ecological areas. They are critically linked to people around them, to political influences, etc. And as such, in science, they are described as socio-ecological systems. We cannot consider a protected area in isolation to the surrounding areas. If we do, in the long term, that protected area will fail. There are a whole bunch of key points that are needed to be considered if you are going to successfully manage a socio-ecological system in which a protected area is embedded. We need to devolve management and decision-making processes to local communities around protected areas. The reason for this is to give them, first of all, an understanding or a feeling of ownership, because when you own an area and it's yours, you are more likely to conserve it and to interact with it in a sustainable fashion. When you don't have any ownership rights or any long-term benefit from that place, you're not likely to conserve it. Local communities must, within their local region, have the right to make rules about natural resource use, how they are going to sustainably utilize those resources. Communities must have strong institutions through which they can conduct their management and rulemaking. So in Botswana, we have the ideal institution for communities, and that is the kotla. Everyone can meet with the chief and come up and discuss issues about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and the chief then has the power to implement those areas. So this is well known now in socio-ecological theory that we need these strong institutions to help with rules, developing rules about natural resource management and implementing those rules. Communities must directly benefit from the natural resources that they are trying to conserve. If they do not receive any benefit from those resources, then there's no reason for them to conserve those resources. So direct benefits from wildlife to communities is critical. Income should be diversified. It should be photographic tourism as much as possible where there are good areas for photographic tourism. There should be safari hunting as well. So there's good examples of where it has worked very well, where communities can maximize their income, such as the Chobe Enclave Community Trust, where they used to have their photographic tourism all along the Linyanti swamps, no hunting in that area, that was just for photographic. And then in the backcountry, far away towards the Chobe Forest Reserve, they had the safari hunting, which was bringing in a lot of money to the community. And so these communities were really optimizing the income they were getting. Now, taking away the safari hunting, they only have the photographic. They're not getting anywhere near the amount of money that they could be getting from the system. The other thing to consider is the meat that comes to the community as well, which is highly valued. And so this is another form of benefit that comes to them. The Westerners are trying to dictate their false paradigm of management of protected areas in Africa